Hello, Odyssey families. Welcome back. It's another video. This one is about social narratives and social stories. I'm going to be looking over here for a second just for my notes, but let's talk about that real quick. You might have had some sent home from your teacher for a variety of different topics regarding COVID and the pandemic and school closures, but we're going to go over sort of just a general overview of social stories, social narratives, kind of what the differences are, what should be included, what shouldn't be included. We're going to go over some examples and talk about how you might implement it. So let's get started. So social narratives is the umbrella that we're going to look under. Social narratives is kind of the larger term. You might hear social stories, and it's kind of, a lot of people use it interchangeably, or even people just refer to it as social stories as it is. Social stories is actually a trademarked version of it. Carol Gray, who is the one she's created the social story approach and performed the research. She's an amazing resource. She has tons of books and videos and games, social games, great stuff that she's created. So if you're interested, please search for her. She's amazing. But we're going to discuss some of her strategies because those are social stories. They're all under the umbrella, but those are kind of, that's a trademarked version. So, but the social narratives is something that's seen across ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, and we're going to kind of talk about both kind of interchangeably because there's a lot of carryover there. So let's talk about an overview. So what is a social story? What's a social narrative? Again, we always start with like a book definition. Story-based interventions identify a target behavior and involve a written description of the situations under which specific behaviors are expected to occur. Okay, let's talk about that. So what we want to talk about for our purposes is, let's pick out a few words. The situation. So situation is going to be, when does something happen? And then we're going to work back. So I wrote down some examples: when you're mad, when there's loud sounds, when you go to someone else's house, when you meet someone new. It could be a social situation. It could be a school-based situation. It could be a task-based. When this happens, I do this. When I feel this way, I do this. And then we talk about what's expected in those situations. So when I meet someone new, I shake their hand, I ask their name, I tell them my name, and then I ask how they're doing. So there's sort of a script there, what the expected behaviors are. We talk about a lot of, we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but with social stories, we're presenting what's the expected behavior. And that's something actually Carol Gray uses a lot, is what's the expected behavior? What's the expected behavior when you meet someone new? It's the ones that I already described: shaking someone's hand, saying hello. What's unexpected is, or unwelcome, is if you meet someone new and you touch their face, or you spit at them, or you grab their belongings. Those are all unexpected. Those are things that we don't want to see. And in social stories, we'll talk about that a little bit. We don't really want to talk about the negatives. I'm going to give you some examples that actually have the negatives in there. But just as an example, I can kind of pick and choose. But what we want to do is we want to focus on the target skill and the situation, and then the target skill within that. So when we're talking about that definition, is the key word where that is specific behaviors are expected to occur. It's specific. It's not general. It's not so open that it's really hard to figure out what to do. A lot of times they'll say like, well, be nice, let's be polite. That's not specific. Those are too general, and you really want a specific thing. Like, for instance, meeting someone new, you don't just say, well, greet them. Greetings can be many different things. Sometimes people greet with kisses, sometimes with hugs, sometimes with a wave. We want to give them, and especially for our learners and our students, we want to define it in a way that's appropriate for them and their age. It might be more appropriate for a 5 or 6 year old to give out a hug to someone that they're, to a family member or someone they don't know as well. But it's certainly not going to be appropriate for a 20-year-old to give out a hug when they need someone new. So when we look at the situation, we look at the context. We want to make sure that it's appropriate to each student and where they are in their development, who they're engaging with, and really what's appropriate at that age. So let's go over some guidelines. These are some guidelines from Carol Gray. Again, we're going to kind of go back and forth. I'll bring up a couple examples in a second. she continues to, just so you know, I pulled this from one of the many resources online. If you just search Carol Gray or social stories, you'll find it. But it keeps evolving. She's been sort of updating her systems over the years. I'm going to give a very brief overview of it. But here's a couple things. You want to share accurate information in a supportive, meaningful, and descriptive manner. So you don't want to highlight the negative. You want to be positive about what's going on. You want to describe it specifically. I already kind of mentioned that. And it has to be meaningful. We're not going to write social stories for things that our students aren't really going to be engaging in. We'd like it to be actually have some sort of import to them. So I'll give some other examples. Well, actually, I already have a list here, but you want to understand their audience, your audience, so it's your student, and then their attitude toward the skill or what's been coming up. So one of the things I made a little list, but I think I already mentioned some of these, but when people are loud, when people take my books, when I go to the dentist, when I go to the doctor, when I'm going home, especially going home from school. And then you would want to define the reaction or what happens when that typically happens. So for instance, when people are loud, I run away or I cry. You want to use it first person. We'll talk about that in a second. When people take my books, I get mad, and you don't want to say that I hit, but maybe they do. We don't want to talk about the hitting, but we want to definitely identify the I am angry or I'm upset. I yell, I push them, I get excited and jump. When we go to the dentist, I run, I run away. But what we want to do is we want to define it, and we'll talk about it in a second. It's easier to do when we actually have it on screen, so I'll bring that up in a second. For Carol Gray, she always recommends having a title, an introduction, a body of it, so that's part of the meat of it, and then a summarizing conclusion. So for instance, when I'm mad could be the title. The introduction is, sometimes I get mad. There would be a lot of I phrases. Then we have the bulk of it. When I get mad, this happens. When I get mad, instead, I can ask for a break. I can ask for help. I can do other things. I can use my words. I can use my pecs. I can use my tablet. And then at the end, you want to sort of restate that again and sort of really kind of wrap it up again. So again, when I'm mad, it's okay, but I still need to use my words or whatever it might be. So we'll go over it again multiple times probably. When writing, you want to use first or third person, have a positive tone, and be absolutely literal and accurate. Again, sort of what I mentioned before is you don't want to just say be nice, or you don't want to just be act nice or do nice things. You want to really define it. You can always say you should be polite or you should be nice, and that includes these things, but you don't want to just leave it as be nice. So let's bring up one. Yeah, let's bring one up. It gets me, which one am I going to look at first? I think it's this one. Okay, so this is one about using deodorant. It's a very simple one. It's not actually, it actually doesn't include some of the things that we've talked about here. I'm going to see if I can zoom in just a little bit. That's pretty good. I think you might be able to see it on your screen. I don't know where it cuts off. So let's see. So this is wearing deodorant. Oh, can I move that over? Okay. I'm a young man, and here we have pictures too. I guess I didn't mention that on here. Sometimes there's pictures, sometimes there's actual photographs. It really depends on the learner, depends on the skill, depends on a lot of different things. This we're using basically, you know, kind of clip art. This looks to me like it's board maker, but you could use all sorts of different things, simple sticks. There's just a ton. What to consider is, I think all the examples I'm going to show today have pictures of some sort, even if it's just, you know, pictures from Google, you know, their Google image search. They're not necessarily pictures of the actual student. A lot of times when we're doing this, we would want to take pictures of the actual student, especially for this sort of thing. We might want to take these pictures instead of having it just a clip art child and all of these things. We might want to have pictures of the student doing some of these things. It really depends, and we can talk about that. I'll talk about that in a sort of later part. So let's just read through this. I'm a young man. I'm growing up. Sometimes my underarms will sweat and feel wet. Sometimes they will smell bad. Now I need to wash with soap and water every day. I dry off. I put on deodorant. It keeps my underarms dry. Now I smell good. I will put on deodorant every day before I put on clothes. Deodorant helps. Now it's part of my daily routine. So a number of things we want to notice. A lot of I statements, which is important. You want to use it from their point of view. This is sort of him reading it to himself. So I'm a young man, I'm growing up, my underarms will sweat. We're also defining what's going on. We're defining the situation. You're getting older, you're gonna start stinking. You really need to wash. So this actually is a deodorant one, but it's also washing too, because there is that part of it's included. It is a related skill, so it's important to mention. So if you do notice, the only thing, and this is a nice thing, this isn't true on every single video or every single example I have today. There's nothing about being bad. It's sometimes they will smell bad, but we're not saying that the child is bad or the student is bad because they're not wearing deodorant. We don't necessarily, there's nothing about, I'm saying with all the negatives, but I just want to identify sort of, so you guys, when you're reading through things and maybe you see a social story or someone sends one to you, you find one on Pinterest or Facebook or something, there's a lot of groups out there. The one thing is, it doesn't say if I don't use deodorant, people aren't going to want to hang out with me. There's nothing negative about that. We don't really want to address that part. We just want to talk about the positive. This is an issue. This is what I can do to fix it. So that's this one. Let's talk about another. So this one's really good as far as we want to use descriptive sentences as well as coaching sentences. So here's where we say descriptive. I'm a young man. I'm growing up. Sometimes my arms will sweat and feel wet. It's nothing the child is the student is control of. This could just as easily be for a female. We'd switch it around. Obviously there's other hygiene tasks for a lot of different kids that could be used, especially females. There's going to be a lot of different hygiene tasks that will be, gender specific or student specific. It really depends on where the student is and what their level is and what age they are, developmentally, everything. We have to consider all those things. But this is just a very general one. So coaching sentences, so when we talk about coaching sentences, it's really about sort of desired behavior. So on this one, I would say that the coaching is probably now I need to wash with soap and water, I dry off, I put on deodorant, and then it tells sort of what happens. I put on the deodorant and it keeps my underarms smelling dry, and also I smell better. The deodorant helps one is a little funky. I don't know if I would try to find another block to put in there, another tile, but to fill in for the full 12, it works. So let's talk about, what's the next one I have? And some of these are going to come up. New share. This kind of throws me off because there's multiples here. I wanted to look up the upset one. Let's look at the upset one. Okay. So this one is about emotional states. So here we go. Sometimes I feel upset. Again, these are larger pages now. So the other one was really, really tight. One page, you got 12 tiles on there. You get in and out. This one is 6 pages, but it's a lot of bigger pictures. So let's look at this one. Sometimes I feel upset. I feel upset when my friends won't play with me or when I don't understand what to do. Oh, sometimes I feel upset. When I feel upset, my body gets all tight and I feel out of control. One of the hard times here is this one that's a great sentiment and that's a great sort of part to have, but I feel out of control. That might be a good phrase to use for this student, but it might not be, as we were saying, it might not be specific enough for every student. We might need to say, my body gets all tight, my face turns red. It really depends on the student and sort of what we can identify in the student that will tell us when they're upset. It could be some other things. I mean, I feel out of control might be hinting to other things, and I think actually we might see it on the next page. When I feel upset, there are things I can do to make myself feel better. That's always a great thing. Let's do the happy face there. I can go to my quiet place and have some quiet time until I feel better. Perfect. I can stop and take a deep breath. That's always good. I can ask my teacher for help. Great. This one, when we talk about, Per Carol Gray, she probably wouldn't want to have this slide in there, but it's not good to hit or kick or scream when I am upset. It isn't, and we all know that. But again, on these social narratives and social stories, usually you want to stay away from that. You want to keep it onto the positive. And again, those like the coaching sentences and desired behaviors. We're trying to focus on what they should be doing, not what they shouldn't be doing. So in this one, we have what he should be doing. When I get upset, I can go take a break. I can go in a quiet spot. I can take deep breaths. I can ask for help. If this were me, I would take this slide out. So number 9, I would take out. The next one is, oh, it's great to have a quiet time and use my words when I'm feeling upset. Yes, it is. We all agree on that one. When I feel better, I can play and be happy again. And I guess that's it. There's no wrap up there. So that's that one. Again, it's pretty good if you notice. Let's go to the top again. It's a lot of I statements. It sets up the situation. I feel upset when my friends won't play with me or when I don't understand what to do. When I get upset, and then defines it. When I get upset, this is what my body does. When I feel upset, this is what I can do instead. So it's a really good, and that's sort of the general with social narratives and social stories. You want to set up the situation, and then you want to say what they should be doing instead. So when I get upset, I can go take a break. When I get upset, and I get upset because of these things that happen, but I can then go and change it. Let's see the next. So kind of what I've already shown in these two. So I did the deodorant, and then when I feel upset, there's a lot of different situations you can target with social narratives and social stories. It can be for social situations, expectations, social cues, new activities. The one that I've actually had success on years ago was I had a student who was getting blood taken, and that was a high stress one. And what we did is we made a social story with pictures of sort of what it might look like. We couldn't get pictures of the actual clinic, but we could set him up for that. And it was thankfully what happened was his father actually had to get a blood pull as well. So so Dad went first and showed him how it worked, but we read the story ahead of time. Dad went in, got his blood taken, and then the student did, and it went pretty darn well as far as for how poorly it could have gone. So dentist, doctor, new classroom, new house. As like with this one, playing with your friends. When I get excited or upset. When I get lost or confused is a big one. When I get lost or confused, I can do this. Going to someone else's house. There's always different rules when you're in someone else's home. 2, and I'm going to bring up one of them here in a second. But with the current climate, social distancing and wearing a mask. When I'm out, I need to stay 6 feet away from people or people that aren't in my home. You can use that as a defining social story would be a pretty good way to define it there. So one thing about this, and I already kind of mentioned it, which was with social stories, all of these are going to have pictures. Per Carol Gray, and it kind of goes back, and some people will talk about some limitations here. Sometimes you don't actually need pictures, but it really depends on your learner. Some students, if you have an older learner with a lot of skills, you might not need the pictures. But I found in my experience and a lot of the research, that's out there, it's beneficial to have pictures just for engagement and motivation. If you just had a page of text, it's probably less likely that the student's going to give too much attention to it. Again, depends on the student, depends on their skills and their interest. But you just have to consider that. Sometimes it's not 100% necessary every single situation. Okay, let's see. I want to make sure this is still working. Okay, cool. I guess I'm going to keep that going. The next one I want to look at when I make mistakes. Oop. Okay, sometimes I make mistakes. This is, I think, the same person made that last one as well. Sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I make mistakes when I try new things. I make mistakes. This is okay. So we're defining the situation, and we're also saying, hey, it's okay. We could also say that everyone makes mistakes sometimes. That would be another thing to say. At school, it is fun to learn new things. I might not spell my words right, so cat is CBF. I might drop a ball when my friend throws it to me. That's another thing. We're defining what that means to make mistakes. If I make a mistake, I can say, oops, take a deep breath and try again. I might not have the right answer to my teacher's questions. You're thinking about a cat when it should be a dog. I can ask my teacher for help. That's always important. Again, this is another one where, depending on who you talk to, this might not be part of it, but it is not good to scream or break things when I make a mistake. It isn't, and we all know that, but again, we want to talk about the positives. Then I'll be able to do lots of things with my friends at school. When I try again or ask for help, I can learn how to do things better, and then that's it. So again, a lot of I statements, a lot of this is what's the situation, these are things I can do. Let's look at the next one and make sure. Okay, let me see if I can switch over to the other one. Technology. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay, that is the right one. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right screen. There we go. Make sure you can see what I can see. All right, so this is a little bit different one. This one is also a lot more, I would say a lot more wordy. It's not bad. Autism Little Learners, thank you. It's not bad. It's actually a pretty good one, but it is a lot of language. So this might not be the best social story for a younger or younger student or a student that has less vocal skills or text or reading skills. So you really have to pare it down and figure out which story is going to be appropriate for your students. So let's look at this one real quick. Seeing other people wearing masks. So this is exactly what we're in, especially when we return to school. We're all probably going to have to wear masks of some sort or variety. So this is a good one for when we come back. And it's good for now, anyway. Story for children. Sometimes I might see people wearing masks, face masks at the store. Of course, it's not letting me there. Wearing a mask at the store is a new thing because of a germ called COVID-19. Before COVID-19, I usually only saw doctors and nurses wearing a face mask. Now, more people are wearing them in different places, not just in a hospital. In a store, I will see some people wearing a mask and some people not wearing a mask. When somebody wears a mask, I can only see their eyes. I won't be able to see their nose or mouth. Their nose and mouth are under the mask. The people wearing masks can still talk and they might even be smiling at me. I just can't see their mouth. People wearing masks take them off when they get home. Then their family can see their nose and mouth again. Some people wear glasses, some people wear hats, and some people wear masks. Seeing people wear masks is different, but it's okay. And then this is, thank you, Autism Little Learners. Where is it? Tara, thank you very much. So this one, again, is a pretty good one. It's probably going to be, again, there's a lot more words, and that's important to have a lot of words. It's a complex subject, so putting 5 words on each slide isn't going to work. So, but it is, let's look at it again with that critical eye. We're looking at, there's some I statements. Sometimes I might see people wearing masks. We're defining why. There is a germ called COVID-19. And then defining it further. Usually I only see people at the hospital wearing a mask. So you're defining the issue, seeing people wearing masks, you're giving them the information about why. You're giving them the information to confirm, yes, underneath the mask, that nose's mouth is still there. I just can't see it. And again, that's okay. They're defining it too, that people take them off when we get home, which we all do. And then we give some more real life examples. So again, a good one. This isn't, this doesn't talk about freaking out if you see people wearing masks. So that's an important one to keep track of. There's not much I would say that's wrong with this necessarily. It's just a lot of words, and you have to think about your learner, and something else that I kind of talked about this. There's a section later that we'll talk about it, but when you're reading this with your student, you can always skip some of the words, or you can kind of give them a summary, but you want to hit the highlights, which is that some people wear masks. You're going to see people with masks, and it's okay, and it's for good reason. It's not just a random occurrence. So when you're presenting it, you might not want to read every single word, so it's okay to kind of summarize it, but just make sure that you're presenting that same information, and they're using those I statements and using that sort of the same kind of method that we're talking about you define a situation, and then you talk about what they can do instead. And this one actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there's not a lot about what they can do. It's just more about defining it. So I guess if you really want to look at a skill, because this is more just describing a situation, if you want to define a skill, if you want to insert a skill in here, it could be, I can still talk to people that have masks on. I can still wave to people that have masks on. I can still play with people from far away, from social distancing. I can still see people and interact with them. I can still say hello. I can still do those things. So that would be the only thing we can really say for this one. That would be too specific about that, about new skills. Let's see. Let's look at one more. I want to make sure I got the right one. And that's this one. It's the last one here. Let me make sure that you guys are seeing the same thing. Cool. Nice, clean hands. Now, this is another one. There's going to be some issues here. I'll just tell you right now. Nice, clean hands. Of course, it's not clicking. We use our hands for many things. We color with our hands. We play with toys with our hands. We use the iPad with our hands. We should keep our hands out of pants. So that's another one where we talk about what we shouldn't do, but it's important for the reason of this one. We should never use our hands to hit. It hurts when we hit others. Again, we're talking about something we shouldn't do instead of the positive. Or touch others or things with dirty hands. It is yuck and yuck with dirty hands. When I hit my mom, family, or friends with dirty hands, it makes them sad. I should keep my hands clean by washing them and keep my hands to myself. So safe hands. That one again is another situation where it could be better because it's keeping your hands to yourself doesn't necessarily tell you what to do. It just tells you that you need to keep them to yourself. But that can mean a number of different things. So you might want to define that further about I can grab a fidget, I can play with my buttons, I can do things to keep myself busy. That could be something, depending on the learner. This makes my mom, family, and friends happy. And then this is actually, it's going to be really hard to see. Let me see if I can zoom in. This is just a hand washing visual. Hard to see. It's kind of skewed a little bit, zoomed in. So, with this one, with all of them, there's good and bad things to them. But the bigger issue is I wanted to sort of, what I really wanted to do here was show you a number of different ones, different social narratives, social stories, so you can kind of see what it might look like. And then let's talk about let's talk about the presentation of what you might do. I'm going to bring up one of the other ones. I'm going to use the making mistakes. I like that one. So if this is the target, this is your student, and you're targeting this. Well, I guess one thing is if you're targeting, so we're targeting a specific goal, which is if I make a mistake, I can say, oops, take a deep breath and try again. Or I can ask my teacher for help. So if those are the two targets, you're probably going to want to take data on both of those. You want to figure out how often are they actually asking for help, and how many of their times are they saying, oops, taking a breath and trying again. Because what we want to do is when we're presenting this, you'd want to know before how often is it happening, and then after you present this, how often is it happening afterward. Because we want to figure out whether this actually works or not. That's sort of the whole point of a lot of the interventions we introduce is we want to know that it changes behavior, and changes the behavior in the way that we want it to change. We don't want to just change behavior in a haphazard way. We want to actually see that what we're targeting is improving. So that's something that you really want to figure out. And I've kind of said this in most all the videos. If you have an in-home behavior therapy program, refer to them and check in with them. And really, if this is a goal, you might already have data collected. And as you introduce this, you'll be able to see sort of an apples to apples comparison. Before we started the social story, it was happening 5 times a day. Well, now it's happening 12 times a day. And that's the target skill, like asking for help, taking a deep breath. Maybe it was only happening 1 time a day, and now it's happening 3 times a day. That's a really great improvement. We want it to happen many more times a day. But you want to have some sort of data to lead you to know what to do next. Because if you introduce this and you have no data, And it's really hard to determine whether or not you should keep using it, modify it, change it up a little bit, or even to stop using it, at all, without some sort of data to back it up, to make that decision really valid. So it's one of those things to consider. I think I need to make a data collection video at some point, and I probably will. But that's something that you want to consider. So let's talk about what you actually do as a presentation. So if you're targeting something like this one, I would say for this one, if you're targeting something that's pretty frequent, like getting upset, making mistakes, that could happen every day, happen multiple times a day. You might want to read this, and I'm saying you might because I can't make a specific recommendation at distance right now. You might want to read it, once a day, twice a day for a couple weeks. You might want to read it. Another example is you might want to read it right after. Like if you see a situation, student makes a mistake, gets kind of upset. Once they're kind of out of that behavior and they've de-escalated and they're in a pretty good zone, bring it back to them and say, hey, let's talk about what just happened. Remember this, and this is what you can do instead. Just to remind them. You don't pile on and say you shouldn't do this and shouldn't do that. We don't want to really address that. You might want to even just bring up this slide, number 7. If I make a mistake, I can say, oops, take a deep breath or try again. Or the next one, which is I can ask my teacher for help. Obviously at school, that's not going to be or at home, that's not going to be as valid. Let's see. So that's if something's happening frequently. You might want to read it multiple times a day. Now, I've always recommended, like, if you're going to read it, read it before bedtime, read it during snack time, something where it's a time that you guys are already sitting down, trying to, in the middle of play, or if they're on a tablet, probably not the time to read a social story. But if you can have sort of some downtime, schedule it in, make it a first then. First, we're going to read the social story, then we're going to do something else fun, hopefully. We've talked about first thens in the other videos. But let's say if it's, what if it's a specific event, or it's a pretty rare event? You might have to read it more often, but if it's a specific event, like the example I gave earlier about getting blood taken, or visiting the doctor, going to the dentist, or a big one that's going to be coming up soon is returning to school after a long break. We would want to really hammer on that social story and really read it a bunch of times right before that event. So if it's going to the doctor, let's say in 2 weeks, there's a doctor's appointment, you might want to read a social story about what you should do in the doctor's office for the 2 weeks leading up to it, and really make sure that you read it right before, and maybe in the car, in the parking lot before you go in, just to really prime that situation. Let's see. Again, I talked about that already. So in the moment, then, and we were talking about this, I talked about this a little bit earlier. After that 2 weeks, you want to look at the data, see if it's effective. Do you keep reading it? Do you change something? And that's where I would say consult with your teacher, consult with your in-home. If you have an in-home behavior program, consult with them, figure out what you should do next. I do want to talk about some limitations, because some folks have different opinions about social stories and social narratives. They are in a sort of a gray area. There is a lot of research out there that is positive to social narratives and social stories, but it's not, I've kind of given an analogy, but it really isn't best suited to be the only thing you do. So if you have this kiddo, if I make a mistake, I can say, oops. We should also have other things going on. A social story or social narrative like this is not the only thing you'd be doing. And then the experience that I've had is that it's part of a larger program. So you might have a behavior plan that's teaching new skills, how to respond when behaviors are happening. You might have visuals and visual schedules and first then, token charts. You might have all these other different things. And social stories is just going to be another part of that. The analogy I wrote down was like, it's the cherry or the chopped nuts on a hot fudge sundae. It's not the ice cream. It's not the whipped cream. It's not the fudge. You can have a hot fudge sundae with ice cream and whipped cream and fudge, and the cherry and the chopped nuts or whatever else, chopped pieces of strawberry or something. Those are all bonus, and that's what this is. This isn't the ice cream. This isn't the crust of the pizza. This is a topping. This is the mushrooms or olives or whatever you're into. It's not the bulk of it. It's not the big part. This is just going to add to whatever else you're doing And it's really just giving, sort of getting repetition for the student to learn those skills in a slightly different way than some of those other things, those other supports that we've talked about, the visual schedules and the first then, and the behavior plan where you're, when this happens, this is how we react. All of those are important, and I think that's where, when we look at this, like social narratives and social stories, it's not the biggest piece of the pie. We'd want to have other things going on. So I did want to talk about that a little bit. I have seen success with it, but not in every case. Not every student is going to respond to this. Not every child is going to respond to this. Some really, really do. And we take advantage of it. And you can write a bunch of different social stories for a bunch of different things, but it's not a be all end all. It's not going to be the magic bullet. It's not going to be the golden ticket that's going to get you out of having a hard time at the doctor's office. It could help, but there's always other things that we should be doing together in concert. Let's see. We also have to consider the skills that the learner has, their learning history, the presentation, like if it's consistent or not consistent. If you've only read it a couple times, it's not going to be as effective as if you read it, for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. The complexity of the target skill. Sometimes it's hard to write a social story for something that's so complex, because we want to write a social story that's going to really hit all the marks, but for a complex behavior, it's really difficult to sort of narrow it down to make it really make it targeted, because with a complex behavior, it's really easy to write some generalities. Like when I make mistakes, I can say these things, and they define mistakes pretty well, but there's 1,000 or 1,000,000 different mistakes you can make, and it's kind of hard to narrow it down. This one works pretty well, but if the example I gave earlier was meeting someone new. If you're meeting someone new, there's 1,000,000 different ways you can greet that person and how you can interact with a person the first time you meet them. And a lot of them are positive. There's a lot of negative ones, but there's a lot of positive ones. And we're just teaching them one. But when we're looking at those kind of social situations, it's really hard to get it into 5 or 6 pages. So you really have to look at what the skill is. And it might be better doing video modeling. It might be better to do role playing. It might be better to do other sort of, especially for the social skills, it might be better to do things with other people and practice that way than on a book. So I guess that kind of wraps it up. Let me stop screen sharing. If I can. Oh, there we go. Stop share. Okay, there I am again. So moving forward, if you have a behavior therapy in-home program, consult with them. They're going to be the best folks to help you, because they're in the home and they can observe everything. They can observe the behaviors and they can help you out there. And they can, collaborate them to figure out if social narratives and social stories are even appropriate for your student at home, and whether target behaviors would be appropriate to target, as we kind of already mentioned. If you have a social story you'd like to introduce, you can try to read it, as I said, read it once per day, a couple weeks, and sort of see how it goes. Data would always be best to have, so you can do a comparison before and after. If there's a skill that you would like to target through that you think would be appropriate for a social story, contact your teacher. And either they can work on one, I'll work on one, and we can collaborate on that. I guess that kind of wraps it up. If you have questions, please, I've said this in other videos. If you have questions, more than likely other parents have questions, so please ask them, and I'll make a troubleshooting video or sort of a second part 2 social narrative story, social story video if we need to. And otherwise, please contact your teachers. I know that they're really excited to hear from you guys. All right, I think that's about it. Thank you very much.